to have to pay that off, and I suspect that was only a minor part of it, of all of the debts, expenses that were incurred, and being in and out of the hospital for about 6 or 8 months on my arm. Now, plastic surgery was pretty much in its infancy then, and so anyway, this is one little aspect of the depression. Just reflecting on that, I can remember that incident as if it were yesterday. One time I was talking to my mother, and she questioned whether I could really, in fact, remember that, and so I recalled something about her coat, and I described the buttons on her coat. I can still recall going under the ether in the old Budge Hospital, which incidentally was across from the temple where I was married, in the same hospital where I was born. I can recall vividly my mother's coat and the buttons and her appearance when I was put under ether on that first day. But anyway, I can also recall very vividly my father coming in from out in the barn, as I remember it was about 9:30 in the morning, and holding me, and I've often empathized with him so many times since then. If I had had one of my boys when they were a little over 3 years old, I had just turned 3 the previous September, having that happen to me, I'm sure that would have really been a blow. And I've really respected my parents for taking good care of me, and I guess maybe the greatest thing that my dad did when I was in this hospital, like I said, they knew very little about plastic surgery, and I guess they'd kind of given up on my arm, and I guess they told my dad that, well, you know, it's probably going to have to amputate it. And my dad kind of said things the way they were and says, you know, you can rub salt in your britches, doctor. And so he proceeded to take me out of the hospital. Later on, Dr. Collister, who was the first dean of the University of Utah Medical School, I guess agreed to try it. And first of all, they tried to graft skin from my mother's leg, and that didn't work out, and so they grafted some skin off of my stomach. You may have recalled one of the pictures that I showed with a little girl that was in the hospital who had a similar, I think she had been burned, and my arm was attached to the side of my body, and that's where the skin came from. Well, anyway, it makes a good story to my students at school, like I can always tell a good war story about it. I guess one of the things that still going in my childhood that we talk about, particularly my sisters and I, were about cleaning the chicken manure every Saturday. We always thought that was really a treat if sometimes during the summer when it wasn't so wet, if we wouldn't have to clean chicken coops in the morning. So all my friends here in Fort Bragg, particularly Glenn, are always talking about my being a chicken farmer, when in fact I think I would. I love chicken and I love eggs, but I think if I had to have a single chicken around, I think I could easily forego the eggs or the chicken. I guess some of the neat things that I remember about growing up, particularly when I got a little older, I really enjoyed being out by myself. I used to like to irrigate out in the field at night, being all alone, and I used to always like to take the night shift on the tractor or the harvester. Sometimes in the spring we'd keep the old tractor going almost 24 hours a day, and it seemed like my dad would sometimes take 12 to 18 hours on it, and I'd often take maybe 6 or 8 hours at night, and that was neat. You know, just kind of being out there by yourself. I really had a great respect for the mountains. While I was, I don't think I'd ever really wanted to be a farmer. I still liked the country and being outside, and I still miss the mountains, and I can see some of those scenes that I used to watch out in the middle of our field. And I guess I kind of realized that was, our farm was kind of hallowed ground. My grandfather homesteaded at first, so it had been in our family until the early 60s, and it was always, I guess, kind of a disappointment to my dad that none of these boys became farmers, but I guess it just wasn't to be. Sometimes I kind of bragged to my kids that I learned how to drive a tractor about 10. I think I was driving a car all over the place when I was about 11. I recall when I graduated from the 9th grade in about 1947, my dad asked me if I wanted to take the car down to the 9th grade dance. Well, in fact, I really hadn't discovered girls that early, and so I didn't, and still haven't really developed a very great fonding for dancing. So anyway, I declined, but I'd often drive the tractor to scout meeting or to some other church meeting, and I think I drove the car to Salt Lake, which was when I was 15 the first time. I don't think insurance was even known in those days. You know, I guess a lot of people might look upon my childhood as kind of uneventful. I think it was a happy childhood. It was pretty carefree. We always knew that we were loved and we'd be taken care of. We had a good time. We had good friends, and you know, I guess if we were to compare what we had with what we have today, why I guess we'd be considered pretty poor in, of course, poor is a relative thing in today's standards in terms of amount of money that would go through us or the number of material things, but you know, again, it was a loving childhood, and it was a happy childhood. I guess one of the things that I might remember is, you know, I really didn't do anything very bad. I think sometimes my brothers and sisters maybe thought I was kind of spoiled, but I think I always counter with that. I think I had more spankings. My dad used to, you know, not be afraid to use the old stick on my rear end, and I think I had more than a lot of them, but my dad would always really make it a point to clear the air. He'd always take me someplace or at dinner that night after I'd had a red rear end, while he would say clear the air. If I think of three things that I ever did that I really, I guess, kind of got heck for, was, one was a little kid. I remember I gave a carton of, or crate of apricots underneath an old granary to some cats. I don't know what the rationale of that was, but remember I got hands for that. And a little older, I failed to take the water out of the tractor one time. I think my dad, really, rather than being angry, he really felt badly. The tractor was relatively new, and it broke the block, and I'm sure that was not appreciated. And let's see, I had something else that I did wrong one time. Oh, I know. One of, I guess, the consistently bad things, when I'd get up in the morning, the house was very cold. Dad would generally get up and he would have built the fire, but it was still probably a little above freezing. But anyway, sometimes he would go out and I would cuddle up behind the stove, seemed like, for a few minutes. And once in a while I'd fail to feed the chickens at night. And our chickens used to get up early with a timer, so they'd start laying eggs at 4 o'clock in the morning. And once in a while Dad would go out and the chickens weren't fed, you know, then I would get holy hell for that. So, you know, I guess I probably lived a pretty uneventful childhood. I guess a lot of people are kind of critical of we Utah Mormons, but you know, I think if we had ever been in a minority situation, or if anybody had ever really given us a bad time, I think we would have really come through. But I think Lewiston, where I was raised, was about 99 and 44/100% LDS. I remember the drugstore man who we used to go over and get candy bars after Sunday school. He also operated the liquor store. I think he was about the only non-Mormon in the community. But while we may have taken it for granted, I don't think I've ever gone more than a couple of weeks in my whole life without going to church. You know, we just accepted, you know, the whole family went to church. That's just the way it was. I guess, though, I don't think I could have explained, young people can today, until I was about a senior in high school, how our church was really different. In other words, I don't think I really developed much of a testimony until I was about a senior. I had a teacher as a senior in high school whom I really greatly admired. It was in church history, and I think I really was able to verbalize then really why our church is different, and really gained really a testimony of the church at that time. I guess if maybe there's one thing that I really kind of feel just a little bit guilty, although not really. when I was a junior in college. This was when the Korean War was kind of going down. You may recall, some of you elderly saints here, that during the Korean War they only allowed one boy to go on a mission from each ward. Well, many people from our ward were in the National Guard and had gone to Korea right after we got out of high school. In fact, one of my good neighborhood friends, Dana Stocks, had done this. So there were only a couple of us around that were eligible. In fact, his name was Willard Jessup. In fact, we used to kid each other, and I guess I was older, so I was asked by the bishop what I felt if I wanted to go on a mission. And it was really a hard decision to make. I talked to my brothers, whom I felt, that their counsel was pretty important, and they suggested that I did not. They did not go on a mission. They were about mission age right during the Second World War. I'm sure my dad was maybe a little disappointed. But anyway, I elected, and of course the other kid was asked and did go. He went to Norway. In fact, I had taught, in fact, at my dad's funeral, we were talking about the fact that since I didn't go, he went to Norway. But as I look back on it, so many little things changed the whole outcome of your life. Had I gone a mission, and in Portland, I would have not met Jan. Had I not met Jan, had I not married Jan, the heredity of my boys would be different. So, as I look back on it, I think that was not a terrible decision. Maybe I would have thought differently had I gone on a mission, but that at least was a decision that I made. Well, it's getting late. This kind of ends my childhood, and so I guess I'll leave my little spot here with my little stick that I focused the camera on, and we'll continue. Years of college between 1950 and 1954. First of all, I recall vividly the day that I registered for college, which was on my 18th birthday. My advisor suggested that I take chemistry, geology, a math class, and in fact that was pretty much the pattern all the way through college. I didn't stay in geology too long. I was there for a couple of quarters. Then later on I transferred into, I pretty much knew that I wanted to go into some kind of a science. It was kind of traditional, I guess, among the boys in our family. Both of my older brothers had gone through medical school. I did all commuter. I commuted, which is about 20 miles, and this was certainly not good for one's social life. My dad was getting into his late 50s at the time, or perhaps even sell out or sell many of her cattle if I were to go down and stay. So I didn't, and like I said, this was probably not the ideal way to go to school. I did. It's been difficult for me. If I think I get a lot out of a lecture. Note-taking is fairly easy, and I can get quite a bit out of a scientific type book, although I'm not an avid reader. Jan reads considerably more than I do. In general, I think I really had good training in science and at Utah State. I pursued the ROTC activity, which you had to do since it was a land grant school, and then the Korean War was pretty much still in earnest when I became my junior military, as it was called, and so eventually graduated with a commission in the United States Air Force. One little complication between my junior and senior year, during the summer I went up to Fairchild Air Force Base in Spokane, Washington, and I was given a physical up there, and the man up there, the doctor, disqualified me from flying. Now, I'd always wanted to fly for some reason. Airplanes had always interested me. I recall as a child going to the Salt Lake Airport, we always wanted to go, or I wanted to go see the airplanes. So anyway, this kind of bugged me because I thought I could see quite well. So anyway, I went and went to a doctor there in Logan, and got him to certify that my eyesight, it was the accommodation, the ability to see close and then at some distance very quickly, and he certified in writing that my accommodation was okay. So on the strength of that, I got to go down to Hill Air Force Base, and had another examination, and he said that my accommodation was okay, and so flying. I've thought since then it didn't help, or didn't hurt rather, to have the man that examined me, the eye doctor there at Hill Air Force Base, to be in my brother's class of medical school. Anyway, I graduated from Utah State in late May of '54. I also received a commission. Then I went into the Air Force on June 21st, 1954, and I was down at Lackland and San Antonio for a while, then later in Mississippi, and later in Harlingen Air Force Base, where I went into navigator training. Then I graduated the next year, which would have made it the fall of 1955. Shortly thereafter, I went to Tittle Air Force Base to get more radar training, and then later on I was up to Otis Air Force Base in Massachusetts, which was a great place to be. I was flying, they were called C-121 Super Constellations. We were flying different areas all the way from off the coast of Florida clear up off the coast of Newfoundland to extend the warning time for potential bombers. That was before they invented missiles. So I was there probably for 6 months or so, and later on we were transferred back to the West Coast for some reason. And I had my choice of being stationed at a place in Seattle, or just outside of Seattle, or Portland. And my first thought was to go to Seattle. It was a bigger city, and I thought perhaps more would be going on. I had a friend, though, at the time, and he was from Albany, which is just south of Portland, and he suggested, well, why don't we both go to Portland? Well, on the strength of his friendship, we did. And decisions you make, perhaps just by fate, changes the course and the heredity of your children, like I said yesterday. So anyway, I was stationed in Portland. And shortly thereafter, I was there in June. In fact, the following 4th of July, I met Jan. I think I've told many of you this story before, but prior to that, I had a friend up there in the church who told me about Jan, and he says that, well, this girl will be coming back from having taught in Long Beach, but she's too tall for you. Well, I said, well, let's find out. So anyway, I met her up at Merwin Dam, which is just a little north of Portland in the state of Washington. I've already described, or Jan probably will, our watermelon spitting episode. Later on that evening, that afternoon, I took her home. I guess we were talking together over her kitchen table probably till 1 or 2 o'clock the next morning. I was really impressed. I had never gone out with a girl like that. She was a very bright girl, very intellectual. She could talk about any subject and just really super stimulating. Well, she was only there for 2 or 3 days. I think I went with her or saw her 1 or 2 times. I knew within 24 hours that she was the girl that I wanted to marry. Now, this morning in our gospel doctrine class, Sister Dodge, Adele, was speaking about one speaker that she had heard down at the Women's Enrichment Conference in Oakland yesterday, and she said, you know, speaking about receiving inspiration, and when you know